Okay, so welcome back everybody to the channel. I just finished up Ender's Game last night, and I have some thoughts. I know this is a lot of people's favorite sci-fi book of all time. It was just okay for me, so let's talk about it. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Alex, and if you have not tuned into the channel before, I do book reviews here, mostly fantasy, but I am stepping into more sci-fi, and I will mix in some horror at some point later on this year. So welcome, and welcome back those of you that follow the channel. So I read Ender's Game over the last 2 days, and so for those of you that don't know, Ender's Game is about Ender Wiggin. He is a super genius 6-year-old child who is the third of his family. So he has an older brother and sister, and in this society you're basically only allowed to have 2 kids. So he does see a lot of neglect and kind of feel like an outcast for being a third. It's basically a derogatory term to call these people thirds. They look down on him even though he's highly intellectual, he's super smart, he's crazy good at everything that he does throughout this entire story. He's looked down on, he's picked on for being small, you know, everything that happens in real life. So this starts out, you see kind of like his lifestyle, what he's going through, and he comes and gets taken away to battle school. So everyone's probably more familiar with this story than I am. Battle school is basically where they take all of these super genius children, mostly male, and they explain it away kind of saying that the females just never actually test into this school. There's a handful of them, but it's mostly male dominant, and they basically train these kids to become fighters in the war. So it's sort of like Starship Troopers, where they're kind of indoctrinating young kids to be in the military, and for whatever reason Ender is the one that's meant to save humanity against the buggers. So the buggers are an alien race. They've had 2 invasions from them where they've had these large-scale space battles. They're fearing that there's a 3rd one coming, and Ender basically has to be the one to become a commander and lead the forces of humanity against the buggers and save life as we know it. So that's the basic setup and the premise. There's a lot of background politicking and things like that that take place in this book. And up front, I do want to give this book a ton of credit for being published in 1985 and having the forethought to understand the internet so well. Seeing that play a big role in this book was interesting. I did like the school setting, the idea of taking these children and putting them in these battle simulations up in space in zero gravity, however they wanted to set this up to train them for the military is a cool idea. And they also have other like video games that they're playing a lot to basically help train. That's all fine. Like I said, the premise surrounding Ender's Game sounded cool. I know it has a ton of hype, a ton of nostalgia, a ton of love from seemingly everybody. It's a lot of people's favorite book. I never really got attached to it. And a couple of the reasons why is Ender himself, I don't think is that likable of a main character, and that's mostly, maybe I just don't like the child prodigy trope. I mean, I've seen it in other books, especially fantasy, where they start out young and they grow through the story, and by the end of it, they're older and more mature, and they're probably like in their mid to late 20s. He's 11 or 12 by the very end of the book. He does so many things in this book, and I get it, like it's the point of his character. He's the smartest, he's the best. But that almost made him more boring to me personally to read about, because like, yeah, he's getting pushed by the teachers. They're kind of manipulating him to get him to this ultimate goal because they know he's the one that has to save humanity. But he doesn't really have to work for a lot of things that he accomplishes. For example, there's a point in the beginning of the book where he basically challenges somebody to this game, and he's never even played it before, and he challenges him to a best of 3. And he loses the first round because he's never played it before, and then he sweeps him 2-1. So I mean, that's just an example of what to expect from Ender Wiggin as a character. And throughout the story, all these battle sims, he's, you know, flawless victories. He's never losing a match, even when all the odds are against him. Everyone's cheating to even make it impossible for him to win. He still finds a way to win. So like, that just is sort of hard to root for, in my opinion. I never really got attached to him, and he has the most character development in the book because it is his story. But aside from him, I couldn't even tell you what the other characters like character was. Most of the side characters, they were just kind of there, and they're just like one note characters that didn't really feel dynamic or really have many dimensions to them. I mean, sort of understandably, it's a very short book. It's only like 230 pages, but I've seen people really praise the characterization in this book and the friendships and I just didn't really get any of that. This this overall review is going to sound pretty negative. I did not hate this book, but I think going into it, knowing all the hype surrounding this, saying it's one of the best sci-fi books ever written, I just never really felt that. There are certain aspects that are so cool and fun and in theory could work really well, and I never got attached to the characters. I wasn't really attached to the story. Overall, just didn't think it was that great. And maybe that's because as now almost 30 as an adult reading this for the first time in 2020, maybe that takes away from it. I don't really know. I probably would have enjoyed this more if I was a teenager back in, early 2000s. I didn't connect with this book at all. And I hate to say it just because I know so many people love this book, and I don't like being negative about books, honestly, and I don't know. That's just kind of where I'm at with this one. This is going to be a spoiler if you haven't read this book. I'm going to talk about something that happens toward the middle that I just felt like didn't need to be in the book. So in the middle of the book, it hard stops from Ender's battle sim chapters, which is basically 2/3 of the book is him in these battle simulations. And then it cuts to Valentine back on Earth with Peter. So Ender's brother and sister, and seemingly at random, I don't know if this was, maybe I missed it, I don't think this was explained, why Peter is such a psycho, why he's gutting and flaying squirrels to watch them die. Like, why is this young kid such a sociopath? And why does Valentine agree to help him basically overthrow the world and rule it through anonymous blog posts online? That whole story and plot, I feel like, belonged in a different book, or it needed to be more fleshed out, because I feel like you kind of just get thrown into it. Peter, apparently, just because he's a super genius, knows that Russia is on the move, and as soon as the Bugger War is over, there's going to be basically another world war almost. They're going to go against this Warsaw Pact, and they're mobilizing their troops. That whole side plot pays off in about a paragraph at the end of the book. After Ender, of course, being the genius that he is, figures out how to kill all the buggers and wipe out an entire planet with essentially a nuke. Then they're like, oh, we're not done with you yet. There's about to be a war. And then it just kind of ends. Like, I am not exaggerating. There was like a paragraph where it's like, oh, that happened. It's over now. Peter is helping rule Earth. And then Valentine shows up to take Ender off of Eros to another planet because he can't go back to Earth because he would have to work for Peter. That whole thing, just like, why is it even really in the book when it doesn't impact Ender's story? Like, Ender goes from battle school to command school to defeating the buggers at the end of the book. That whole side plot of Valentine and Peter almost does nothing to the book. Like, you could have taken that out and just spent more time internally with Ender, developing more characters, telling us why these kids are so smart. Like, why are they born geniuses? Why do they have to go to command school and battle school and become these super soldiers? I would have liked to see that more explained. Why are the teachers such assholes to everybody? I would love more background on that. That's more interesting than this whole subplot of Valentine and Peter trying to take over the internet, which, again, almost plays no role in the ending of this book. Ender and them kill the buggers. He finds out that he was actually fighting the buggers the whole time, realizes that he wiped out an entire planet of an alien race, killed a bunch of his friends. Like, focus more on that and his internalization of that and how messed up he is. Like, I understand he was kind of a damaged character because this entire book was structured around manipulating him. I would have loved more of that fleshed out. A lot of things aren't really explained and fleshed out, and I feel like if they were, this book would be a lot better. I'm honestly more interested in the ending of it, when Ender finds the queen egg of the bugger hive and takes it with him to find another planet for them to live on peacefully, because he realizes that through the game that he was playing, they were actually trying to communicate. So go figure, they weren't malicious aliens just trying to kill humanity. They wanted to live peacefully, and they just couldn't communicate it. I'm more interested in that than half of what this book had to offer. I feel like there were a lot of great concepts, and I overall just didn't like where they went. Mixed in with the POV switching just kind of threw me off. Like, usually I'm an action guy. I loved Rage of Dragons, even though that spent a lot of time in training grounds and really fighting for these tournaments and getting in battles. And I just didn't feel the love for it here. I didn't enjoy the characters. This book was just okay. Okay, so back from my spoiler discussion that ended up getting long-winded. Ultimately, this book was okay. I didn't love it. I was not attached to the characters. I felt like they could have been fleshed out a lot more. I feel like they should have focused more on the one story that you start off with. I wish that had seen more fleshed out dynamics and building around that character and that story, rather than the side plot that ends up happening and taking away from the book, in my opinion. I feel like you could have added a couple hundred pages, really fleshed out each of the side characters, the teacher's motivation, why these kids are so smart, like why are they born super geniuses, what led to this restricted policy of birth, and why is that leading to these thirds being these super geniuses. Like, outside of just, I understand probably overpopulation is the issue, but I want more of like what led to this happening, like why this exists, and then flesh out everything along the way. Take out the whole side plot that I don't even feel like impacted the story, and I would have enjoyed this book a lot more. Obviously, if you love this book, that is great. I really wish that I did. As far as like a recommendation, yeah, go read it. Read it for yourself, decide if you like it or not. Like I said, millions of people love this book. I just didn't, and that's fine. It was just okay, man. I don't know what else to say. Those are my thoughts and opinions on Ender's Game. I may get to, like I said, either Ender's Shadow or Speaker for the Dead, because I'm more interested in those stories, I think, than what I got here. So drop in the comments down below. Please yell at me for everything that you think I'm wrong about, why you love the book. Maybe I missed something, maybe I'm not understanding something. Let me know your thoughts on this one, because it just didn't quite do it for me, unfortunately. But until next time, everybody, keep reading.